I'm going to talk about the representations of time in deep reinforcement learning agents today. And just to give you a brief background, in recent years, there's a lot of advancement between the collaboration of AI and neuroscience. And in particular, one field of AI, which is deep reinforcement learning, which is to use a neural network to solve reinforcement learning problems. They have been seen in a lot of collaborations with neuroscience. And so one example is that many years ago, there's a neurophysiology study done in monkeys, which showed that the firing rates of dopaminergic neurons correlated with basically a reinforcement learning concept called TD error, which is kind of like a bridge between neuroscience and AI, and in particular reinforcement learning. And so the problem that we're trying to solve today is basically to model the representation of time in the brain. And before we talk about time, I just want to quickly talk about place. And this is something that got the Nobel Prize in 2014. So basically, these are cells in the hippocampus that kind of fire when the animal is at a particular location in like a platform. And these are called place cells. And here you can see that two example place cells. One only fires when the animal is at like over here, and then the second one only fires when the animal is like more towards the upper right corner. And so this is place cells. And as an analogy of place cells, we have time cells, which is cells that fire when the animal is at like a certain time during like a delayed period. And so if we just set the animal at a particular location, i.e. on the treadmill, then what you can see is that during the time when it's on the treadmill, neurons would fire in like a particular order. In other words, neuron would fire at different times. And these time cells are actually pretty widespread in the brain. So you can see them in hippocampus, frontal cortex, medial entorhinal cortex, etc. So what we did in our study is that we try to model these time cells with deep reinforcement learning agents. So what we have here is that we have a convolutional neural network to process the visual inputs, and then we pass it onto a LSTM unit, like a layer of LSTM units to do the working memory task. And then we recorded the activities of the LSTM network. And so what we saw was that basically, for some units in the LSTM network, these cells, the activity like monotonically decreased during the period, and we also saw some cells that monotonically increased, and some other cells fired more like time cells in the brain, in that they fire only at a particular time during the delay period. So, for example, here we can see the unit number 48. It's only firing at like, say, like 9-ish time steps into the delay. And if we put all the units together, we can see that they form two groups of cells. One is ramping cells, and you can see some of them monotonically decrease, and some of them, their firing rates monotonically increase. And then another group of cells, we call them sequence cells. And these are more like time cells in the brain, in that they form a sequence and they fire at particular like points in time. And we try to decode whether these time cells can actually encode like elapsed time during the delay period. And we saw is that these cells actually have a very high accuracy for decoding time, which means that they are a very good model for modeling how our brain represents time during the working memory task. Right. And then lastly, our results are available on bioRxiv as a preprint. And I just want to say thank you to Ivado for funding this project, and thank you for our lovely lab. So yeah,